I think right now there's a lot of exciting stuff going on and there's a lot of technology, and they have a particular vintage that's got to see multiple transitions of when enabling technologies come through. And I do think that AI plus data is one of those, and unlocking all the value that's been stored at the data layer and now being able to use AI on top of it instead of rules engines and instead of people having to engage is going to be very exciting. I think it's uncertain because now you're going to have machines asking machines about information. And that means that it's going to be asking questions that are very different than any questions that were being asked before. And a machine is going to be able to metabolize a lot more information than it ever has before to come out with outcomes. And I think we're going to see a settling out point over the next couple of years that sort of has this elevation that is a productivity increase of a certain amount, that it becomes valuable to businesses, but not so crazy that it looks like it's out in left field and it's not even game day. And I think just as we get more experience, as we consume more data and crunch more data, it will become more valuable. I actually think we're going to see the Clay Christensen version of many mills applied to large language models. I think they're going to be more like specific language models. And I think customer data is one of those specific language models. I think industries like financial services, like healthcare, like government are all going to see subsets of those language models that are specifically for them.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Augmented AI Labs, and I'm excited that you're tuning in to the Shift AI podcast, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Tony Owens, the recently appointed CEO of Amperity. Tony brings an impressive background with over 20 years of experience at two tech powerhouses, a decade at Oracle, followed by 10 years at Salesforce, where he gained deep insights into the evolving world of customer data and enterprise technology. At Amperity, one of Seattle's region's notable tech unicorns, Tony is now leading the charge in revolutionizing how companies leverage customer data in the age of AI. His unique perspective on the intersection of customer identity, personalization, and artificial intelligence offers a fascinating glimpse into how our digital experiences as consumers are being transformed. If you're interested in understanding how AI is changing the way businesses engage with their customers and how personalization is evolving beyond simple recommendations, or what the future holds for customer data platforms, you won't want to miss this conversation. We also want to send out a special thank you to Augmented AI Labs for sponsoring this episode. This is going to be a great show as we explore the future of customer data and AI with Tony. So let's get to it. All right, Tony, welcome to the Shift AI podcast. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing I know that you started at Amperity pretty recently, but you've had a storied career before that. So will you tell the audience just a little bit about your background and what got you to this point?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. I've had an opportunity to see the podcast previously, and I've learned a lot from the guests that you've had. Love the types of questions that you've had for folks, because I think that's where we as viewers get to learn a lot more by better questions versus just having the answer. So thanks for putting this all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
My career has been dominated pretty much by two companies, and it was 10 years at Salesforce and 10 years at Oracle. And when I got to Oracle, we were sort of transforming into becoming more of an applications company. We'd already done quite well inside of the database space. We were moving into middleware pretty rapidly, but a lot of it was how we were going to transform the applications market. And that's where I really started to see how powerful customer data could be for companies and the way in which they could use it, where the data layer and customer data became top of mind for me. And it's not like we hadn't used customer data in the past, but it was really the way that people were starting to use it was materially different than they ever had before. Before it was just a repository so that you could recall on it. And now it was going to be actionable data, and it was going to be contextual data and imperishable data. And I think that a lot of those things still live with customer data today. And then Mark at Salesforce reached out and said, "Hey, I think we're doing some pretty interesting things, and you should come over here." And spent 10 years there and left a few years ago. Thought we had accomplished some really great things between 2011 and 2021, and still super excited for them and their future, and even more excited for how Amperity is looking at things now and where we think the future of customer data is going to be.
Yeah, two amazing companies. And Amperity is an interesting story. I'm interviewing you from Seattle today. I've been in Seattle for a very long time, and Amperity has been a huge success story in Seattle. One of those unicorns that really made a big splash. And So maybe talk a little bit about what excited you about taking the job. And, given what Amperity has kind of gone through, and now that we're at this transition point going into AI and all the things that apply there. And then also for the audience that doesn't know about Amperity, if you can also just tell them a little bit about it as well.
Sure. So I'll start by telling it more in a story format where, the co-founders, Kabir Shahani and Derek Slager, had identified, and it would be the second time that they're starting a company, the first one a very successful startup, and then starting up in Amperity in 2016. They really started to understand the importance of customer data and really anchored into the idea that if you don't have identity associated with customer data, then all the other things that you do with it are going to be either mistargeted or less valuable sort of thing. And I think we can all agree that there's nothing more important than customer data of all the data sets that are out there. And, they just continued to stay very focused on the value proposition that was in that space. And customers were experiencing it. And I think they'd really been experiencing it for the previous 20 years. If you look at things like master data management and ETL and reverse ETL and all the things that would be touching it, I think people had experienced those problems. So they had enough anxiety. Plus you had all of these SaaS systems coming in and they were being stitched together. And so if you didn't have customer identity right, a lot of these systems wouldn't be working properly together. And they did a great job of identifying what the problem was and having an aspirin for folks that wanted to solve that problem. And I think it actually progressed in a very short period of time with digital transformation and customer 360 and COVID. And usually what you can metabolize in a 5 to 10 year period, the company was really metabolizing that in a 2 to 3 year period. And then, I think people were looking to get value and continuing to work inside of the customer data platform market. And AI has started to take off. So I think a lot of the stuff that you saw compressed previously because of those external forces, I think the next external force that's going to have that same kind of compression feeling for people working with customer data is AI. And on the one hand, I could make arguments that AI has been here for more than 20 years. And on the other hand, I could say not the way that AI is here now. It was funny when somebody was talking about DARPA and they're like, oh yeah, it only took us, 25, 30 years to get a browser from when that came out. And then it sort of escalated quickly from there. I think we won't have to wait for those time cycles. I think you're going to start seeing just rapid productivity coming through. And, where are you going to place that productivity and how are you going to look at it? And what forms that's going to take is going to be very different than what we've seen in previous systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Kabir was recently on the show and your name came up and he was just really excited about you coming in and becoming the CEO. And I think that there's just a lot of energy around that. And I just wonder, what were you thinking when you took the job and what are you the most excited about?
I've always wanted to be around customer data. And so I was really excited about that. And when I started hearing the history of where Amperity had been and how they looked at the problem, I got into conversations with Kabir and other members of the board and some folks that used to be part of the board. And some of them have started to become really great mentors for me over the last 5-6 months. And it was, if we were going to start a customer data company right now, what would that look like? And as we started to talk through that and started to talk through the idea that what if we were going to disrupt ourselves? How do we make our existing customers wildly successful? How do we continue working with our partners? But how do we take advantage of new technologies and new platforms and partnerships that we could have on the go forward? And what would Amperity look like in a data plus AI architecture? That's where I got really excited about the opportunity at Amperity.
That's a great way to think about it. I want to talk more about that. Like, what would you do if you were starting today with the technology that you have? And I also, the idea of being able to personalize experiences based on customer data for people is interesting. And I know the idea that AI is just magic and all of a sudden you're going to ask it questions and get customer data is a false narrative. I know it's much, much harder than that. So can we explore that a little bit? Like, what are the opportunities that large language models bring to the situation? And also, what are the challenges? What's the hard part of really getting customer personalization right?
Yeah, so I tend to think of it as we're doing the same things, but if you had the availability of more modern technologies, how would you utilize those in a materially different way? And so when I give the examples to our customers and our partners and our prospects, I talk a little bit about, hey, do you remember when you used to use a phone and call a call center and say, hey, can I find out my available balance? And you had to have a certain amount of identity, and then you would be asked a number of questions, and then hopefully, they have the right person asking very sensitive information. And then they said, no, we're a bank, we're going to let you log in using a browser and, maybe later on a phone using an app, but we're going to let you log in. And if you have the right credentialing and you have the right identity and identity resolution, we're going to let you make SQL calls that we were previously making before. So we're democratizing how you could utilize the technology, because now I'm going to click on account balance. And I click on account balance, it's making a SQL call in the background, and then it's exposing to me, here's what your account balance is. And so what we were really doing is moving the point of impact, point of request, if you will, over to the user.
Yeah.
Now, the fundamental difference between that now is that was just basically a set of rules. And the way that we think about coding and everything is sort of if then else, embedded if statements. If the user is credentialed and certified and they have access to this type of information based on these set of rules, we will let them see their balance. The fundamental difference now is going to be we're going to democratize processes instead of just democratizing information. So it's not just SQL calls that somebody makes by clicking through an app on their phone. It's now I'm controlling the journey, if you will. So usually journeys have been placed on you. Like, Boaz, we're going to take you on this buying journey and we're going to give you next logical purchase. Is that actually a higher conversion rate rather than you saying, I'm going to look for things, but now the aperture on looking for things, let's say we're on an e-commerce site, is no longer this wide. It's not like a 180 degree kind of view. Based off of everything we know about you in first party data, we can move that to 90. And maybe I'll take some third party data and move it down to 20 degrees variance. So you're on your own journey. You control your journey and you decide where you want to go and how you want to get there. And we'll just continue to provide you guardrails. But the more we democratize processes and data, the more you're going to feel like it's more personalized for you.
Yeah.
And personalizing, I think if you look over the last 10 years, you look at some of the legacy systems that were email response and stuff like that, it was very defined in that old rules-based system.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think like the promise of having that kind of personalization is what people want. And in exchange, they're willing to give over their data in order to get those kinds of experiences. I think maybe a lot of people have felt like past 10 years, the exchange wasn't great,
right?
But now maybe it's getting better. Let's paint that picture. Like imagine like how is shopping online going to change for me, given all the things that and that you're looking ahead and thinking about?
Yeah, and I'm going to steal that, by the way, that it's been a bad exchange rate for a while on the commerce aspects of these things. I think the difference that you're going to start to see in terms of how people engage with systems and how they get affinity towards the brand is that they know me at an appropriate level. I'm flying on an elevation that I'm comfortable with. And, in certain ways, I know what the buying journey looks like. And I'll give you an example. If I'm a major brand, I know that you're online shopping, looking at certain things, trying to decide if you like it or not online. You might go home and in between doing some things that you're doing at home, look at something on your phone. And ultimately you might walk into a store, if it's apparel and you're going to try something on. And now I'm going to be capturing all that because I'm going to be capturing how you came to us to begin with, how often you engage with us, what channels you're using, and then ultimately where you buy certain things. And I might see that your recidivism purchases for those same like products, maybe different colors, will start to come into that profile as well. So the more I know about you, the more I can give you sort of the guidance on what you want your own journey to be. But the reality is part of that journey is not just how I'm going to affect you. I'm not going to change your daily schedule, but now I'm starting to fit into your schedule.
Yeah.
So now I'm not trying to force you to make a click. I'm guiding you to the place that you can make what you feel are the best decisions for you. And based off that sort of customer experience and engagement, I'm more likely to deal with you. And frankly, it creates a moat as well. Because could you imagine when I'm buying apparel on brand A site and it's that kind of experience?
Oh, yeah.
And then I go to brand B site and I'm like, wow, this is a horrible experience. Yeah. I think we've all seen that when we go into restaurants and stuff like that. Why do I go back to the same restaurants? It's the food and the experience because I can get great food at a number of different places.
Yeah. You want people to remember you. You want to feel special. You want to feel like, it wants to be personal.
That's
but
right.
Like with that comes a level of anxiety about your personal information. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's something that that you think about and have to deal with. So like, how do you balance that? Like getting this great experience for me, but also making sure that, I'm not feeling bombarded or spammed or like my information is protected and so on, all those issues. Like, how do you think about that?
I think brands are going to have to make a choice between deciding, is this just purely a numbers game and bombarding, and it's not going to be just my products, but it's also going to be my customer experience that creates personalization in the brand and the most amount of revenue that would be generated through a cross-channel sort of thing? Or do I start to understand the customer better and make it more personalized and understand the analytics associated with that customer that would say, they shouldn't have to choose only send me a text once every 30 days about what your product release is. They should be seeing that I don't make purchases but twice a year with them. And it would be a 50% increase if I made purchases 3 times a year with them. And, for somebody to process that kind of data and to use all the information that's available and then to come up with that mindset and then deploy it has just never been possible.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because it feels like sometimes companies are they've got a blunt tool and they just know, if I send out 50,000 emails, I'm going to get some percentage. And maybe this kind of very fine, meticulous way of reaching customers and doing it at the right times is possible now. And that's just going to make for a much, much stickier experience for all of us.
That's right. That's the experience that I want to engage in.
Yeah. And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast, produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world. It's the perfect companion podcast to Shift AI. GeekWire podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Before we go further with the interview, I want to tell you about one of our podcast sponsors, Augmented AI Labs, and how they're transforming businesses through intelligent AI solutions. Augmented AI Labs specializes in helping organizations unlock their potential with Gen AI, starting with your most valuable asset, your business knowledge. Their comprehensive process begins by identifying critical workflow challenges and knowledge needs, then building custom solutions that make your company's expertise instantly accessible. The Augmented AI Labs team combines fine-tuning and retrieval methods to ensure your AI solutions truly understand your business context. They thoroughly test and validate each solution, ensuring it delivers measurable value before creating a detailed technical blueprint for deployment. The real beauty of partnering with Augmented AI Labs is that they don't just stop at strategy. They build, deploy, and manage these solutions for you, continuously improving your knowledge systems while you focus on what you do best. If you're ready to transform how your organization leverages AI and knowledge, visit augmentedAIlabs.com. and click on the Contact Us button. That's augmentedAIlabs.com. Now back to the episode. I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of reach back to your leadership experience at Oracle and Salesforce and just talk about workers inside companies and, motivating people and kind of the human element to businesses, given, what we're hearing every day about agents taking over the tasks that we're doing. And how do you think about that as a CEO, leading teams and trying to move the ball forward, given the changes and the transformations that we're going to see in the next, years to come? And maybe think back to the times and the mentors that you've had over the years at these pretty amazing companies and what you've learned from that.
Yeah, so I'll take that sort of 2 questions. One is, how are agents going to affect the workforce? And then I'll take it as, how does that play into some of the people I feel like have mentored me? And I'll specifically talk around cultural aspects. So I think when it comes to agents inside of the workplace and using agents for more of the type of work that's being done, I think you as a company are going to decide we want to do more with less or we want to do more with the same.
Yeah.
And I think most companies are going to decide that they want to do more with the same. And most people view that as a productivity play. I don't necessarily view it as a productivity play. I view it as look, the tasks that are repeatable tasks, the tasks that are mundane tasks, the tasks that do have rules that are associated with them, we should have actually been automating those anyway. And you could take a lot of the ERP systems and say they were automating those tasks and they were systems of record and we should have been doing stuff with it. I think now you have people that if you want to say, I'm going to do more with the same, were people actually getting the benefits of those systems? So if we use that same sort of run-up analogy, and we'll use banking again, banking were dumping things into an S390 for quite some time and seeing customer data, like how often do you go to the ATM and where do you go to the ATM, but they were never using it. And so data and how agents get used have to have three elements to it. We have to understand, what the data means contextually. And then we have to know that data is perishable. It only matters to a certain period of time. And then the third thing is it actionable? So should you be getting alerts that say that, there's ATMs in these three different areas, should you be interested, as an example? Or if you just typed in, hey, where's my closest branch? You would have to go into an app right now to see the closest branch, or do you go into a browser or do you go into an AI system? What would really be served up with you, including systems that are listening? Voice comes very much big into play because right now we think of agents as these machine-to-machine things and the user interfaces are keyboards. And I think that's going to change as well. I think from a cultural perspective, I've been inside of companies that, has a balance between culture and performance. And so I believe a performance culture is what really matters. I think A players want to be on A teams. I think they want to be going after things. I think they're looking for purpose. I think they're looking for challenges. I think they want to learn. So a lot of folks, and including, what Dweck had put out in Mindset, which I thought was, amazing, was this idea, are you a knowing culture or a learning culture? I've been fortunate to be in both things, that both companies for the majority of my career. I've been in other companies, but those two big chunks were learning cultures. I think the difference that people are talking about and people are saying now is you have to be a teaching culture. And I think they could be right. I view it a little bit differently. And I view it as it's an enablement culture. So are you enabling people and are you enabling systems and are you enabling processes? So you go from a learning culture to an enabling culture, not a teaching culture, if you will.
I like that framework.
Yeah. And so I think people go on and they say, look, we're an enabling culture. Then you have to say we're enabling all of our stakeholders. And our stakeholders would be customers and would be partners and would be employees. And so from that perspective, we're very much in the idea of, I want to create a learning culture that becomes more of an enabling culture over time.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into some of the mentors that you've had over time, but also the mentoring that you're doing now. Can you talk about some of those individuals?
Yeah, because it spans two different companies. The first one I'd start off with is a gentleman named Keith Block. And Keith was responsible for the largest business that Oracle had. And Keith actually came out of the consulting world and then owned both consulting and sales. And the major transition, and I think why it was so important inside of that transition is because Oracle was going through a transition. And do you want people who purely understand the transactional nature of sales, or do you want people who understand customer strategy and then apply technology to it? And so I think, having somebody with Keith's mindset in terms of how you view customer challenges and how you address those challenges and how you have enabling technologies that would allow them to address them. I think you needed that kind of background. So I think we were very fortunate at Oracle that Keith was moving over into that. But the second side of that, and from what I experienced, just as important, was a culture that was going to allow you to be a learning culture and to be a performance culture and to always be looking for the next thing. And so you had this balance between what's the market and engagement strategy and what kind of culture do you want inside of the company? And Keith did a really great job of, I think, developing leaders. If you look at all the different people that were in Keith's organization and where they are in the industry, if they were in that organization in the 2010s, I think you see them running major businesses at a lot of different companies in technology and other industries all around the world. So I think the shadow that he casts is pretty wide and deep into the industry. That's more of a historical one. Certainly I learned a lot by being able to engage with other people at Oracle, just on the business that I had and the account types, because it was the 300 largest accounts. I got to work with Safra Katz, who's now the CEO of Oracle, in close quarters. And the way that she thinks about business and the way that she thinks about customer value and the way that she thinks about shareholder value, I really haven't seen other people think quite like she does around those things and keep it all orchestrated. So certainly a huge fan of hers. And who can't be a fan of Mark at Salesforce and the way that he thinks about things and anticipates the market and the way that he gets passionate. But I'd also tell you the same things that you see about that passion, drive, and things that you hear about the culture. And that's not a show. After hours, he's the same Mark, whether you're in the tower or you're at a customer site or you're at his house. It just doesn't change. He's passionate about people. He's passionate about the company. He's passionate about customer success. So, I think that has a major influence. And a newer one, and somebody used to be on the board of Amperity, and we still have a working relationship, and we talk once a quarter. I'm looking forward to seeing him over the next few weeks, is Kevin Johnson. And Kevin has been through the technology industry. Kevin was the CEO of Starbucks, and he has the Amperity experience background from being on the board, but then also all the great experience that he brings. And so it's nice to have somebody when you say, look, these are all the things that I'm seeing. How would you interpret that? He typically takes what I say over a 10-minute period and summarizes it in about 60 seconds. So it's super helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's critical to have those kinds of advisors on your team. I mean, it's amazing. Well, I always like to end the show with the same question. And the question is, if you could describe the future of work, the future of AI in 2 words, what would those 2 words be? And then you can elaborate. Yeah.
So I'll talk about it in AI terms more than work. I think it's exciting and uncertain. All at the same time.
And uncertain. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually think those are actually the same words, just put differently, because I think right now there's a lot of exciting stuff going on and there's a lot of technology. And I have a particular vintage that's got to see multiple transitions of when enabling technologies come through. And I do think that AI plus data is one of those, and unlocking all the value that's been stored at the data layer. And now being able to use AI on top of it instead of rules engines and instead of people having to engage is going to be very exciting. I think it's uncertain because now you're going to have machines asking machines about information. And that means that it's going to be asking questions that are very different than any questions that were being asked before. And a machine is going to be able to metabolize a lot more information than it ever has before to come out with outcomes. And I think we're going to see a settling out point over the next couple of years that sort of has this elevation that is a productivity increase of a certain amount, that it becomes valuable to businesses, but not so crazy that it looks like it's out in left field and it's not even game day. And I think just as we get more experience and I think people tend to think of it as we consume more data and crunch more data, it will become more valuable. I actually think we're going to see the Clay Christensen version of many mills applied to large language models. I think they're going to be more like specific language models. And I think customer data is one of those specific language models. I think industries like financial services, like healthcare, like government are all going to see subsets of those language models that are specifically for them.
Well, you said this at the beginning, and how powerful it is to be sitting on customer data and how incredible it's going to be, and to shift the kind of way that we experience our shopping patterns and the way that we are out there in the world. And I'm just really excited for what's going to be happening with Amperity. We're going to be watching really, really closely, and we should kind of re-engage at some point too, and have you back on the show just to kind of check in, because I think it's going to really change our experiences as shoppers and as individuals. And I think it's exciting times. So Tony, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate your insights. It was fun talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. What a great conversation with Tony Owens from Amperity. His journey from Oracle to Salesforce and now to Amperity reflects the evolution of customer data utilization itself. From simple repositories to actionable insights, and now to the AI-powered personalization engines of tomorrow. His vision of exciting and uncertain times ahead captures the transformative potential of combining rich customer data with AI capabilities, while acknowledging we're still in the early stages of this revolution. I truly appreciate Tony's insights on creating an enabled culture, rather than just a learning culture, and his reflection on powerful mentors like Keith Block, Safra Katz, and Mark Benioff, who instilled in him the importance of leadership that balances performance with purpose in navigating technological change. If you're interested in learning more about Amperity and their innovative approach to customer data platforms, you can find them at amperity.com. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the Shift AI podcast for more exciting interviews and to the Augmented Edge newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The Shift AI podcast is syndicated by GeekWire, and we're grateful to have the show sponsored by Augmented AI Labs. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.